I have three life verses that really speak to me vividly and that formulate a large part of my calling, which is reflected in the books. The first one is Hebrews 12, 1 and 2. Pretty familiar verse. It talks about we're surrounded by a cloud of witnesses, therefore let us run with patience or endurance the race marked out for us, looking always to Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith. I love that phrase, the author. It gives me inspiration. And it's a beautiful picture that God is writing a story in our lives. That is a thread that goes through these books. The second verse is a bit more obscure. It's Romans 4:17 and the verses that follow. But it's a powerful verse. It talks about how Abraham had faith even though he was as good as dead. God had told him he was going to be the father of many nations. And there's a sentence in there, the second half of verse 17, it says, "The God who gives life to the dead and calls things that are not as though they are." Or in the more modern biblical versions, it says, God calls things into existence that do not exist. That's powerful to me. We can't let other people write our story. Oftentimes we see ourselves the way others view us and we think, well, I'll never be this, I'll never be that. Think back to Jesus. He calls things that are not as though they are. Peter, who was probably regarded by his co-disciples as shifting sand. Jesus said, "Simon, I'm going to give you the name Peter. You are a rock." What? Peter, a rock? But Jesus sees things that we do not see. The third verse that I'll mention is a more recent verse that I ran across in Acts chapter 2. When Peter is preaching the great sermon at Pentecost, he says, "This gospel is for you and your children and for all those who are far off." I love that. We would say, this gospel is for you and your children, and if you're really good and you're real close, this gospel's for you. No, God says this gospel is for those who are far off. That's, to me, so inspirational. And as I write these pages in the series called The Journey, that's the inspiration. Regardless of where you're at on your journey, you're closer than you think. You're one step away into the arms of Jesus.